Jay.
And I'm Hilary. Welcome to the PowersShift podcast.
How have you been?
Yeah, I feel like I'm all over the place. And yeah, it's good. And it's bad, and it's fun, and it's not fun.
Yeah.
But it's a whirlwind, and that's life, and I love it. I love every second of it.
So that's a choice.
Yeah, but I feel like I turned a new leaf. Is that what they say?
Turned over a new leaf.
Yeah.
Like your mom saying, instead of stick, you're just a stick in the mud. She says you're just a stick out of the mud. I'm going, what are you talking about, woman?
It's funny what just one little word can do.
Yes.
All right, so we're here, episode, what is this, 26?
Yeah. Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah, well, you said that it was all over the place. I guess, what do you mean by that? I mean, we're checking in, but I've been gone for basically, 2 weeks? Just got back home.
3 weeks or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a month of being very active.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was, I was house sitting, dog sitting during that time that you were gone. So I was in a different environment, and it's nice to have my own space and figuring out stuff with the business and just continuing to grow and let go of things. I think for me, that's, it's this lesson of I can get on one track and be really committed to that. And when it's not working, I don't budge. I'm like, well, let's just keep going. Let's just keep going. And instead of just being like, wait, pause, let's kind of reevaluate here and see where I need to make these little shifts here and there. They don't have to be massive shifts. And sometimes they do. But I feel like I'm getting to this space of learning to, balance that a little bit more, if that makes sense.
Which is part of rhythms.
Not be so rigid. And yeah, in some aspect of my personality, I am very much go with the flow and, flexible about a lot of things. But then there's particular things in my life that I get pretty rigid on. So
yeah, I think there's people like you and I, personality-wise, we don't always function in it, but we need a certain amount of order to help rein us in and balance us.
I don't think it's just our personalities, though. I think that's
I'm very...
I think that's a human thing.
Yeah, but I mean, for people like me, I'm very gray, generally. And sometimes things aren't gray. Sometimes they're black and white, and the opposite is true. But we're in very similar places. I just got back from Oklahoma City, and Jordan and I were doing a lot of practical work on creating rhythms for him, and for me too. It's weird. I'm his father, and I'm almost 40 years older than him, but we are still doing the same kind of work, personal work, so
yeah,
it's been good. But
yeah, so we both, I feel like, have had these last few weeks and even longer, because I feel like we've been doing this for a while now, but I feel like for me it feels like it's getting stronger, or I'm seeing the need more, or maybe my spirit's crying out more for these rhythms, for this, what is my priority in life? What are my values? What really matters? And being very simple in that, but also it can be how do we make that practical in our day-to-day lives? So I feel like
it's a rhetorical question, right? It's a real question, but it's also rhetorical. So it's the how. Yeah. We know the what and the why. How do we actually live it out?
Yeah, yeah. So in many different areas, you and I, though, have been this whole concept of a rule of life, which that's what we're going to talk about today, is a rule of life.
Well, is that what you want to talk about? Is that what you want to talk about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Well, you and I were talking before we got the camera going and the recording, but I think everyone, I heard Putty Putman say this once. If you don't know who he is, you can Google him, but he's this millennial physicist.
Mm-hmm.
Great guy, very people-oriented, very scarily intelligent. But we were talking
I mean, y'all
about...
are friends, right?
Yeah,
Like he's not just a person you Googled.
Right. No, I said, if you want to know who he is,
Yeah,
you
no.
can go him. I know
Yeah,
Putty.
yeah.
And he's a little old. He's a little older than you, but not much. He was saying that everybody's got a worldview, whether you know you have a worldview or not, and how you live is the walking out of your worldview.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you don't have awareness, maybe now people do. The light came on for me is how I live is my worldview. That's what I believe, and it's how I live my life.
Mm-hmm.
As we grow, which is what you're talking about, I think, not to put words in your mouth.
How dare you?
I never shall. Is part of, I was thinking about, that's a lot of words to say. I think there's a correlation between our worldview and what you were just talking about, our rule of life. And another word for that is customary. That's not a word that we customarily use, customary, but it's a word that's related to rule of life.
Well, let's pause though, and let's talk about what is a rule of life. So, this has come up this concept has come up for both of us in the books that we're reading and the various groups that we're a part of. This whole concept is what?
I just noticed you have glitter on your face. Was it an 8-year-old that did your makeup?
I think she's 9.
Okay, 9. Sorry. Anyway, I just noticed glitter.
It really, yeah. So pretty.
It's distracting. Yes,
No,
we're
yeah.
beautiful without the glitter, but that's just an added thing.
No, I was hanging out with my friend and her kids yesterday. Shout out to Anna and the Baldwins.
We're getting sidetracked.
One of her kids, though, did my makeup yesterday. It was really sweet. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah, nice.
My nails.
They're all different colors.
I know. So cute.
Yeah.
Okay, so where were we?
We're talking about how we're getting to this whole idea of rule of life, and we're not putting this on anybody. Our challenge is whether we know it or not, we all live by some quote unquote rules, even if we don't have any rules.
Well,
it's a rule of life.
But a rule of life isn't about rules. That's a big thing.
Yeah,
so
we'll
let's
get
talk
to
about,
that.
Yeah.
How we got here, or how I got here, was I started doing spiritual formation years and years ago, but where I was aware of it was about 2016, 18, somewhere in there. Probably 2015 when I retired, I went, there's more than this. I spent my 26 years doing the corporate thing, figured out what I wanted to be when I grow up. Halfway through that,
That's when you started growing your hair out and making the beads and turning into a monk.
Oh, a hippie. Yeah, no, I went, one day I just went, there's more. I mean, if I'm going to say I'm a believer in the creator of the universe, how come it doesn't seem like it?
Yeah.
No. And so for me, it was a personal journey of God showing me that. Part of that in the last probably 8 years, is when I met a man named Mark Fields down in South America, and he started telling me about how spiritual formation had transformed him.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, his relationship with God and deepening of that, and some practices of spirituality and spiritual formation. So that led me to this place of it was an app that I was using called Lectio 365.
Mm-hmm.
And in Lectio 365, I came to discover that was part of a group called the 24/7 Prayer Movement.
Right.
Pete Gregg, Tyler Staton, a bunch of them in there, all over the world.
Yeah.
And
Jill.
Yeah, Jill Weber.
Jill Weber.
In Canada. And anyway, that what I discovered in that was there was an ecumenical lay order of this movement.
So what does ecumenical mean? Because that's a word that we also don't use every day. That means all encompassing in terms of, right? Like, well,
You should probably Google it while I'm talking. It's the ecumenical, but the important thing is it's a lay order of the 24/7 prayer movement, but it's been validated by the Anglican Church. And it's called the Order of the Mustard Seed, which came from the Moravians in the 1700s.
So ecumenical is, you can say it's universal, of or relating to the worldwide Christian church, concerned with establishing or promoting unity among churches or religions.
Okay.
So ecumenical is unity.
Yeah, which is, someone said, in essentials, unity; in non-essentials, liberty; in all things, charity. Which I love. It's becoming part of my rule of life.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this Order of the Mustard Seed is an order that helps create a rule of life, and really as a response to when Jesus said, go into all the world and make disciples, teaching them everything that I've commanded you. Love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself, and go. So he
was really, like, to me, it's a very personal, vulnerable call when Jesus is saying, "Come, follow me." He's not saying, "Come and just read a bunch of books and study about God." He says, "Come walk with me.
Relate to me. Have a relationship."
Yeah, like it's a very up close and personal.
It's very intimate, and it's
But yeah, so you kind of, through a series of just getting more into spiritual direction, spiritual formation. I remember when you really got into Saint Ignatius.
Still part of it.
Yeah, you got me into that. It kind of opened up this more of a monastic
Saint Benedict
practice rather than this Western evangelical Christian movement. And interestingly, just really pause real quick, the way that you came to that, I feel like it's so crazy how, because you and I both are similar, like in this place now, similarly of dissecting what is our rule of life, which again we will get to what that means. But like I came at it from such a different approach. Like mine was Buddhism that really led me into and just more spiritual practices like breathing and learning about how breath works, not even on a spiritual level, on a biological, physiological level.
So I don't know where we were going with that.
Well,
but
I think it's cool how different.
Oh yeah.
You and I, how different places we came from. Because I was really, before I came back to Christ, I was doing a lot of these more, these kind of practices and rhythms.
And they are practice. Buddhism is really a practice.
Where I was relating and connecting with God, through.
Well, you were seeking.
Yeah, but through breath, through experience. And I got to a point where it was like, okay, I don't want to just read. Again, I don't want to read about God. I want to experience God. So how can I create space in my day where I'm actually connecting with God? Not just, I don't want to know it's cool to learn someone else's perspective and their experience with God, but I want to experience God. And I remember this shift for me of like, okay, who is God really? Not everything that I've been told and everything that's been shoved down my throat, whatever, or my own false narratives. Like, let me lay all that out, like, let all that go.
Yeah. And
just get to know.
Move that chair out a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Take a pause in there because I think it might distract people because it's moving.
Okay.
Yes. And I think that was our prayer for you as our daughter, your mom and I, was meet her where she's at. Not with all you kids, but you in particular, because you're such a seeker. I'm not saying your brothers and sisters aren't. You just have been a real intentional seeker for years.
Yeah.
And so God met you where you were. That's the cool thing about God, is it's not cookie cutter. He meets us where we're at. For me, it was in the Western church. Are you crying?
No.
Okay. For me, it was, and this is where God met me, is I was so disillusioned with the church in the West, especially.
Yeah.
Just, what are we doing? And one of my friends named Trey said, it's just a big show. Well, I'm sitting there meditating and fuming about that, and I just felt like the Lord revealed to me, guess what? You are the church. It's you. You're bad mouthing everybody else, but it's you. And it's you have to walk in patience and forgiveness and kindness and all that, and I just wasn't. And so that was part of the journey too, is God going, I want to know you, and if you get as close to me as you can, most of this stuff will take care of itself.
Yeah.
All the stuff you're angsting about will take care of itself.
Well, I think it's like one of the most, I think humility is one of the most prominent aspects of going down that journey for anybody I talk to. A commonality is you get humbled really fast.
Bruce Wimberly says that is the key component to a walk with God, is humility.
Yeah.
So part of what and we're going to get into this, but so for me it was when I found out about the order of the mustard seed, I just went, these guys are articulating what I've been thinking and feeling. It's weird. I'm going, where have I been for the past 20 years or 100 years or whatever, pre-Reformation, where these people are creating these practices. And the Lord just impressed on my thinking is, well, you've been distracted with everything else but me. And it wasn't a smackdown. It's never, with the Lord, it's never abuse. It's always invitation and kindness and gentleness, firmness, yes, but always His arm around me, inviting me to more. And so the order of the mustard seed was a frame. It is a framework for creating practices, creating rhythms, spiritual rhythms in our life. All of which, every single bit of it, Jesus coming, these rules of life, the order of the mustard seed, it's all as an avenue to intimacy with the Creator of the universe. That's what it's all about. Christianity is different than most other major religions in that it's around a relationship.
So do you not think that other people have relationships with their gods?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying and I'm not saying that I'm right. Okay, hear me. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I'm just asking. Like you're saying that Christianity is that's what sets it apart, is that it's about a relationship. But do other?
I'm sure they do, but most, I have friends that are Hindu. I have a couple of Muslim friends. At least from their perspective, is God isn't really somebody you can know. And y'all hear me. I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying it's what I've learned about walking with Jesus, as He said, I am the way. It's about relationship.
God as infinite and equally intimate. So, so that's a whole other side.
So maybe we ought to research that, because I'm saying that's what my interactions with Muslims and Hindu people in particular, haven't talked to many Buddhists, but that's what it seems to me. Now, I'm saying here I could be wrong about that, but it seems to me that it's more about, in some of those religions, it's more about being afraid than it is about God loving us and wanting to have a relationship with us. I don't know if I'm right on that. I'll have to research it.
Yeah.
So anyway, the sidetrack. But so the order of the mustard seed, where I'm at in joining that order, is coming to the end of my year of preparation. So in the end of this year, I will actually take my vows. And the main vows are: be true to Christ, be kind to everyone you meet, and take the good news to the world. So be
true, be kind, go.
Yes, be true, be kind, go. And it's really helping me to to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I've just through my own experience and my own growth, I'm starting to look into it myself. And I think the backstory is what really captured me was, so this guy, Zinzendorf, sounds like a Harry Potter character.
Yeah.
He was, came from wealth and had started this order in the 1700s, like 1716, maybe.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
And so from that though, he opened up his land, his estate to, there was
the Moravians.
The Moravian refugees came and moved in, and it went through a period of chaos. It went through a lot of ups and downs, and he went and lived among the people, and from that they started praying, and they prayed
100 years.
Yeah.
Straight. Nonstop in the same place for 100 years. Yeah, and we talk about, I think I was talking to some of my friends, we talk about prayer a whole lot, but we don't really actually pray as much as we talk about it. And so that was their focus. And this order of that's within the 24/7 prayer movement is about actually praying.
Right, it's praying prayers, not just saying prayers.
Right.
That's there's a big difference in there.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's just pause real quick and actually talk about a rule of life.
Okay, so I've done research and I've been studying it in the guide that we got in the year of preparation. But a rule of life is a set of guidelines or principles that outline how one intends to live out their faith and values on a daily basis.
So let's talk about what they are not, because when I think of rule of life, when I first heard it, I think of rules, I think of religion,
Right.
and it was and it's not rules. It's a set of values. It's a set of it's relationships.
Some people might call it a mantra. Some people might call it your life.
Or rhythm, a sacred rhythm. It's, but it's real quick though, when they're talking about rule, that word right there, because I'm a wordy. So that word rule comes from regula, which is Latin, and it means a straight piece of wood. That's literally what it means. And so it's a trellis, essentially, is what a rule is. And for me, that really helps because it gives me a visual and perspective on, like, when I think of a trellis, it literally lifts...
It's a support system.
Yeah. It lifts plants off the ground. It creates space. It brings life to light. From this cool, dark space, down below, it kind of lifts it up. It creates breathing room. And it actually, trellises, they prevent the plants from getting diseases or getting, just being down in like the kind of moldy, wet ground area, if that makes sense. So it's for
especially
me,
for climbing plants.
Yeah, it's just for me, it's like breath. It's like it gives room to breathe. And so when I think of a rule of life, it's like, okay, this is whatever my rule of life is. It's giving me life, and energy. It's not just helping me, it's helping the world, those around me. It's relationships that build.
Maybe you could call it a guide for life.
Yeah.
Or something, but...
You can call it whatever you want. And let me read this real quick, because so this is Sacred Rhythms by Ruth Haley Barton. I'm doing a book study with this right now with a bunch of awesome women. But she says, a rule of life seeks to respond to two questions. Who do I want to be? And how do I want to live? Actually, it might be more accurate to say that a rule of life seeks to address the interplay between these two questions. How do I want to live so I can be who I want to be?
So identity.
So, and then
part of your identity.
Yeah, St. Benedict's rule he is simply a pattern of attitudes, behaviors, and practices that are regular and routine, are intended to produce a certain quality of life and character. And this author prefers to talk about it with the language of rhythm, you know, because it speaks of regularity that the body and soul can count on, but it also speaks of ebb and flow, creativity and beauty, music and dancing, joy and giving ourselves over to a force or a power that is beyond ourselves and is deeply good. Over time, as we surrender ourselves to new life rhythms, they help us to surrender old behaviors, attitudes, and practices so that we can be shaped by new ones.
Yeah, so if you relate that to what we've been talking about with this order, for example, it talks about the rule of life for the order of the mustard seed provides a foundation for all people who are members of that. Each candidate takes the common rule and adds the personal detail that describes how they intend to live out each practice as they develop their own personal customary. And customary is another similar related word to rule of life. And for example, here's the order of the mustard seeds vows. For fool that I am, I promise to be true to Christ through a life of prayer, worship, and creativity for his glory. So help me God. Weak as I am, I promise to be kind to people through a life of hospitality, justice, and mercy. I will look for Christ in others, serve Christ in others, and show Christ to others in the joy of the Holy Spirit, for the glory of our Father, so help me God.
So it's sort of like
Yeah, and then small as I am, and wherever I am, I promise to serve the gospel of Christ through a life of learning and evangelism. I will spend myself on behalf of the broken and the poor in the power of the Spirit, giving my whole life that Christ might be loved in every language, tribe, and nation in this generation for the glory of our Father, so help me God. We will not live for ourselves, so help us God. And so I think one thing it does too is what it's done for me is bring awareness.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot in most of our episodes is awareness. So it creates this pause, right? This pause to be able to see and be aware of how you're actually behaving, how you're living your life.
And part of it too is when you take your vows and promise, to do that, which is scary because there's weight behind vows.
Yeah.
Is you either get a ring that's got, none of us live for ourselves engraved in it, or you get a tattoo with that on it. And so the creativity, a lot of people create their own tattoos with that theme on it. But what I like about it is it's not condemnation. It's not legalism. That's one thing I've noticed about this whole process. It's not legalistic. There's a whole lot of freedom in creating the rule of life. And for me, it's like, well, some of this stuff I've been doing because I had a rule of life, and it, I think, is mine has always been for years is my calling or my desire is to affirm, validate, encourage, challenge, and support everyone that comes across my path. Well, I've taken that part of my customary or my rule of life and added it and incorporated that be true, be kind, and go. But you have to you have to have awareness before you can actually do that. And so I don't feel like I was very aware for half my life. And I'm being a little bit critical, but I wasn't aware that it was even a thing.
Yeah. Also, a couple things. Like one thing I thought that was neat whenever I'm listening to the OMS podcast is the big thing they talk about is, again, the humility aspect, because the number one, I guess, what did Pete Greig say? The number one most dangerous, how would you word that? People who take vows and people who, there's obviously, like, people are scared of that. We live in a world where, like, commitment is a very scary thing.
Yes.
But pride will often come in there, like, I took a vow, I'm this, and they really address that head on of saying this this does not make you
better or exclusive, or
it's that humble, it's that humility part that I think is huge for me, and especially just with a lot of my unraveling and coming back to God. It was just, I can't stand the religious, and I'm saying religious as in the hypocrites and the judgmental people who, in the name of Christ, oppress and do the very opposite things of what Christ talks about.
Yeah.
You know? So,
you and I used to have those conversations. You'd be so angry at the church. Mm-hmm. And our perspective is the West.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing that all of this awareness does is it goes, oh, wait, I am that, and I have to humble myself. It's an act of your will to say, I will humble myself here. And I think taking these vows, when you start looking at motivation and attitude, like I'm talking to myself here, when I started looking at my attitude and my motivations, a lot of times they were not true.
What do you
They
mean?
were very self-serving. It was about me. I wanted to criticize everybody for what they weren't doing and they should do and all that. And it was like, and then the Lord's got an arm around me going, yeah, look at yourself. Quote Michael Jackson. It's weird, but looking at the man in the mirror,
The man in the mirror.
Right. And it's like, it doesn't make you arrogant. It's causing me to take a really good look at myself and go, love your neighbor like you love yourself. I don't do that. Mm-hmm. I love myself first, and that in a sometimes not very healthy way. And as I grow in this practice, it's what Christian scripture talks about, being transformed by the renewing of your mind. In other words, permanent change and growth in the way we think.
Well, so what for you day to day, like what are some of the practices? Like, so you have this quote unquote rule of life, you have this rhythm, the sacred rhythm. What does that actually manifest in this today? Like when we get off of this podcast, like how does all of this affect your day? What are you actually like? How are you being? What are you doing?
Well, it affects your relationships, for one.
Well, I'm talking about you.
I'm talking about me. It affects my relationships. It's affected my prayer life, the time I spend. It's weird because I love movies. I love them.
Yeah.
I love stories. I could watch them all the time. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that in and of itself. But what I'm learning now is if this was weird, I'll be sitting there and all of a sudden go, you know what? I just need to spend time in meditating and thinking with God and doing that. And it's not holding me the same way it used to. There's more awareness, and for you it might, you go, no, you watch a lot of movies, Dad. But for me, it's like just going, I'd rather just spend time being silent, being quiet, just to center in life and to, like, for example, prayer. I hope this is making sense. One of the things I'm learning is the desert mothers and fathers used to say, the more you know about prayer, the less you talk.
Right.
And so sitting and just being, kind of like what Ruth Haley Barton said, is just being in this presence and being silent. It's just changing the way I think about a lot of things. My relationships, becoming a better listener, becoming more discerning.
Well, in a hurried, sick culture, just being, a lot of people would look at that as a waste.
Well, I was watching one of those police shows yesterday, and somebody actually said, or maybe it was you that said it. Somebody's either on the show itself or somebody said one of the commentators said it's weird how when a catastrophe happens, that people pull their cameras out and start filming instead of thinking about getting them help, getting the person help. This person was getting assaulted by a group of people. Instead of calling for help and held them, and everybody pulled out their camera and started filming. What is that? Mm-hmm. It's not having awareness. It's not, it's kind of, I'm relating it to what you're saying is there's so much noise, and noise isn't just decibels.
Yeah.
Noise is, when I'm starting to center down in the day, it's like static on a radio. And I'm being quiet, but there's this whole thing going on in my head, and I have to consciously and intentionally still my soul.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I think for me, it's because I'm a seeker and I love learning. I have to set the books. I have to set the podcast. I have to set everything down and just go sit outside and lay outside. I've been bringing, having my ukulele more readily available, opposed to my phone. And that time where I was, dog sitting and stuff, having, about 10 days to myself to really like
a retreat,
get really serious and not in a critical, condemning way with myself, because I have to be gentle. I know I have to be gentle because I can be pretty hard on myself. But like, what are my priorities? Like the things that I say I believe in, how am I actually living that? Like if I say that I'm all about the environment and saving the environment, like how am I actually doing that? And coming from a place of, again, being just curious, like and holding myself accountable. Just because I say I love the environment and I share all the memes about environment, like we're so trigger happy with memes now that you can get, you have all your value, all the things that you value and you hold true, whether it has anything to do with, the environmental rights, human rights, anything. Mm-hmm. Like we share memes, and that's like, okay, that's my, I'm done today. Instead of like, okay, for me, I'm like, where in my life am I actually like, does that reflect that I believe in that?
So
does that make sense?
Yeah, no, so in terms of, what's the purpose of a rule of life in your thinking?
I think for me, a lot of it is the intentionality piece of it.
Yeah.
Like, how do I just in all areas of my life be more intentional? And we've talked about this before. I know that I have blind spots. I know that when I get on my soapbox, about something, it's like I can easily throw everything, everything out the window. If someone pisses me off or says something I don't like, and again, the rule of life is me and God really getting to a space where it's so intimate and it's so tangible and it's so real that, like, I don't know, that's all I want is just, mm-hmm. I like my breath. I want it to like resonate with God's breath. Mm-hmm. I want my actions, my love to completely reflect God's love. And I'm so far from that. Yet like the grace that I feel and that
the growth I see as your dad, as your father too, it's almost not unbelievable to me. It's like, is this real? And I think, with you, with Jordan, with Haley, these are your siblings, and with Kirsten. Kirsten was always the most obviously spiritual one, growing up. She was. Yeah,
she's got some gifts for sure.
But, just watching you guys grow, and really the rule of life, one of the ideas or concept is that it provides, like you said, a trellis or a structure that helps us align our daily activities and choices with our goals and commitments. Mm. and most people would say spiritual goals and spiritual commitments, but I would say it's all interwoven. Your life is your life. You don't separate your work life, your spiritual life, and your natural life into these silos. It's just your life.
Yeah, the holistic perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it affects, it's all intertwined with each other. You don't separate it out.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of this too, what we're talking about, and I think that it scares me and puts me in a vulnerable place, is that it's living this and being this with other people. It's easy for me I love people.
Yeah.
I am absolutely enamored by the human being and our spirits and our hearts, all that. I love stories too, like you do. And I'm equally as terrified to be fully seen and fully exposed. And, I've been hurt in my past. And so it's hard not to carry some of that pain. I carry that pain still. And so to be living in a way that it's not just me closing everybody off or putting up all my walls, and it's, I can figure this out on my own. I had seasons where I feel like I was.
You probably could.
Well, and I was, and I was very, I relied on myself though, and I didn't, I didn't want to rely on anybody else or God. So this whole thing of doing it in a communal way, of like with my friends, for instance, I love that I can come to some of my closest friends where we have different beliefs, we have completely different perspectives on things, yet I feel like my friends, like I'm very proud of my friends because I know that they care about their own character and their integrity in life, and to me that matters. Like I want to be with friends and in a community where we are calling each other up and we're lifting each other up, we're encouraging each other, we're listening
in
to
all
each
things
other.
Charity.
Yeah. So that's where it's like it's learning to. For me, it's learning to stay and stand in a lot of the discomfort and stand in the tension where typically I would run away. That's kind of my trauma response is avoid, run.
And you can do that on a
chaos.
triune level too, body, soul, and spirit. You can run physically, or you can shut down emotionally, or or just think with blinders on.
That's true, and I think a lot of this it's helping me see the areas in my life. For instance, like I talk about this often with my business. It's like I'm starting to see, because I think because of my time in solitude and my time in quietness and in prayer, it's like seeing this, being able to get this perspective of seeing where this one attitude or behavior that I've carried on that's maybe not the most productive or is negative. I see that overlapping in my business area, and it doesn't on the surface level. I would be like whatever, but like I'm starting to see these little areas where I'm like, oh, this is rooted. The reason why I'm doing this or why I'm resisting XYZ, it's rooted here, if that makes sense. Like it's rooted in this area of my life, and this is an area of my life where I need growth. I need to practice, and so calling that out in terms of like verbalizing it or writing it out for me, like when I'm able to do that with myself and then with another person, it's really helpful, because it's like, oh, okay, like so I can just like let that go now, and it gives it depth and breadth, I guess.
One of the rhythms is that you're talking about, though, is what we haven't talked about, is journaling. That's a practice of release, I think, and creativity and a lot of things. But there are a lot of other practices where you can do that. Building, and it's cadence is another word. Forming a cadence around in life.
Yeah. Well, I like that, the whole thing about rhythm and cadence, because I think it pulls me out of the logic. And when I think of creativity, I think of more of the language around music and.
Yeah, or it's this. my life has often felt haphazard because I didn't really have any structure around it. And if you look at a child who has zero structure, I don't even have to talk about what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you love somebody, you build a relationship with them, and part of building that is, I've said this for years. What I learned the most the first couple of years of marriage was how selfish I was. I was, it was all about me, but you don't go into it thinking that. You're ignorant about it a lot of times, and then you get this awareness by living with another person.
Made me think of something too when you were talking about the structure piece of it. So when I think of structure too, I think for me, I have to be mindful and aware that I can get pretty rigid,
Same.
with myself. It's like I get dogmatic. I like hate dogma. Yeah, I will catch myself and I'm like, oh wow, I feel like that's very dogmatic, or
It's discerning too that you see it.
right, where yeah, usually the things that piss me off the most or rile me up the most, it's like I'm like, okay, how does that pertain to me? And
Jesus didn't like it either.
yeah.
Remember he talked about it. You guys are putting all this weight on the people, but you're like whitewashed tombs. You
Right.
look good on the outside and it's death on the inside.
Yeah. So so that I think for all of this, for me in my journey and just living is whether it's with the business, my spiritual stuff, and again, all of that's interwoven with my relationships, my friendships. It's like, how do I have one like patience and grace with myself and with other people and not get so rigid with a lot of these practices, because sometimes too I feel like these practices and tools then become the idols themselves.
Right.
And
it's all a means to an end, right?
yeah, and it's like, okay, and Bo says this a lot, it's like being one with the one, being present in his presence. Like that is so, I feel like that's so rich for me, like to the point where I feel like I can taste that, because it washes all of the boxes and all of that stuff away. Like I want my rhythm, my sacred rhythms or my rule of life to be flexible in the sense that I'm moving and being spontaneous in life and letting that co-creation, that co-partnership with God express. And it's not gonna look like how I always want it to look. And I don't, because I can sometimes get, like I in my Port Angeles season, I would get really rigid in some things where I was doing all these ceremonies, all these things that it was just like, if I don't meditate for 2 hours, then I didn't have like my time with God. And it's like, okay, like I can meditate while I'm doing the dishes. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, maybe that's a conversation we can have later on. Is the line, but the fine line between legalism and being disciplined.
Yeah.
Because there is a line. If you're not legalistic about practicing for a marathon, you will not run a marathon.
True.
So it's finding balance in that.
Yeah. Well, again, it's that what we keep saying, that rhythm and the awareness piece of it. And,
right.
Yeah, and it's a forever journey,
Yeah, I mean, it's true.
But it's exciting. I mean, I think it's cool to see where you're going or Mom's going with it. We're all growing and learning. I feel like having some really awesome conversations with my friends that have just been really life-giving, and seeing my
comments
friends.
from this, listening to our conversations too, or comments from your friends that are listening to the conversations we're having, or just other ones?
No, it's more so talking about just the conversations I've been having with just my my family, like that, my chosen family, where it's just like seeing my friends like step into their own and take on risk and challenging themselves and seeing them grow. It's just cool. Like it's cool to be living life with friends who have had for less than a year, all the way to friends that I've had for close to 20 years now, and to see how we're, the direction we're all going in. And I feel like it points to that piece of like community. Like in all of this, we need each other, and we need,
That's that humility showing up again, I've noticed with some of our friends, the growth area has been humility. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, maybe we're just getting started in this, but what do you think?
Do you have a question we could leave people with, or what are your takeaways, or both?
One would be have you ever thought about a rule of life, and what is yours? Because it's what we were talking about before, is everybody's got a worldview. How do you want to live your life, and who do you want to be? The question is, how do you want to live your life, and who do you want to be?
Any takeaways?
It's always good because it's kind of like a rose trellis. It is a support system, and Americans are not that good at that. It's individual. I know it's general, but
Right, but it's all about
It's about making progress and doing more and being this and blah blah blah, and at the end of the day, everybody's just exhausted. And so my takeaway is that, I guess, is just mindfulness and awareness about where we are and what we're saying and what we're doing. Mindfulness, I guess, would be the word. What about you?
The humility piece of it is a big one. And I think we didn't really touch on this, but I feel like this whole conversation for me is hitting on this collective feeling that everyone's feeling, like that there's something more, or like
Something's going on in the cosmos.
Something is a hub.
Yeah.
And for me, developing these real practical, day-to-day, tangible practices or attitudes or behaviors, what am I going to anchor myself in? Am I going to anchor myself in the world that has a pretty shoddy foundation, at least from my experience of living in the world?
Pretty precarious.
That was there's a lot of good in the world, but I'm talking about the things where the world can often tell you who you are, and, sometimes teaches us not to think for ourselves, and society has put on, so many different, and that's a whole other rabbit trail, but yeah, what am I going to anchor myself in? Who am I going to anchor myself to?
I like that better. Yeah. Who am I going to anchor myself in?
And to me, that's God, and that's Jesus Christ, and that's the most important thing, I think, in my life. So
yeah, and not believing. I think I'm learning in that is Jesus can be a concept. What Jesus taught as a rabbi was right on the money, man. Here, follow me. Let me show you this. And then, like you said earlier, though, that can become the thing instead of the real thing, which is intimacy with our Creator.
Yeah, and unlike, I think, the Western church, like my duty isn't to go and convert people. It's
make church members.
It's to love in a way that's so radical that it brings people to their knees. And I've experienced that just in such especially the last few years, of just the overwhelming, abundant love and peace from Christ, that it's hard not to talk about it, because I never want to be talking about it and like be pushing that on anybody.
Or minimalize it.
Yeah.
It's hard. He said, they persecuted me and they've hated me. They're going to persecute you and hate you too. But I'm sending you the Holy Spirit that gives you the power to actually live the way I've called you to live. if you try to do that on your own, you're not going to be able to do it.
And it's not some hyper spiritualized experience either. It's like in the mundane, like it's in the
simple.
It's in the day-to-day, breath to breath. Like my prayer part of this is, for a while now, has been one step, one breath. One step, one breath. And anytime throughout the day when I take a step, and sometimes I remember it, sometimes I don't, I say that, because it is like a second by second dying.
Mine is have mercy.
Yeah. Kyrie eleison.
That's a Gregorian chant too, by the way.
I know.
Yeah, have mercy. And yeah, so I mean, we just chased another rabbit, but the takeaways are, one is awareness, and yours was humility.
That and anchor, finding your anchors. What are your anchors?
Which really, that rule could be that as well. A trellis is an anchor.
It is. I mean, it is.
So
yeah.
Lots of imagery.
Yeah. As always, love you, Pops.
Love you, honey.
Love everybody who's listening. We really, we're in a place where I feel like through all of this, I feel like we've kind of, at least for me, it seems like with the podcast, a lot of stress has left.
Yeah.
Where we're not as being as I'm not being a stickler about things as much as I was, and I feel like we still are really unsure of the direction of PowersShift podcast and what we're doing with it, but it still seems like it's right to be doing, with us having these conversations.
Yeah, just model having conversations. Don't worry so much about the content.
We love y'all. You matter.
You are seen.
Yeah, we see you. We love you. Have a beautiful day, and we'll see you next time.